Fantasy is at the core of all stalking. With Bardo, fantasies overwhelmed him to the point where he could not separate fact from fiction. This confusion had plagued him all his life.
Bardo is the youngest of 7 children, but he spends most of his time alone, in front of the television. It's his escape from the disorder in his home and mind. There is mental illness in his family. Bardo is diagnosed with manic depression. His depression manifests in self-mutilation and suicide attempts. Twice he is sent to a mental hospital, but his troubles go unchecked. Arizona, 1986. Bardo first discovers actress Rebecca Schaeffer on a TV commercial.
Who stalked actress Rebecca Schaeffer and shot her to death.
In his diary, he writes that they share a unique bond. To be close to her, he reads everything about her, tapes all of her shows, writes her zealously. When she sends him a generic glamour headshot, he feels encouraged. Bardo goes from Tucson to Los Angeles 4 times to try and see her at her work. Each time, security guards turn him away. He returns home frustrated, his anger bruised.
Bardo's imaginary world was so active that he truly believed he had to be with Schaeffer. In his mind, Schaeffer was no stranger. Rather, their lives were intertwined. He could never be without her, and the only way to have her was to kill her.
The breaking point comes when he sees Schaeffer in an erotic movie scene. It unleashes rage in him. In his mind, she has lost her purity, betrayed him. So he punishes her for it. July 1989. Bardo obtains Schaeffer's home address and shoots her dead. He is apprehended and found guilty. His case leads to the first anti-stalking law passed in California. Dr. Stone places Bardo on the scale of evil.
Unlike Farley, Bardo is psychotic and suffers from manic depression. These factors also obscured his sense of reality and his awareness of his actions. But his intent was less malicious than Farley's, and he killed only 1 victim, whereas Farley murdered 7. For these reasons, I rank Bardo low on the scale at level 6.
Nearly 20 years later, Dr. Stone contacts Bardo while he's serving a life sentence in California. Dr. Stone listens to their recorded phone conversations.
You mentioned there were certain things about her or underlined the attraction.
She's she's very stunning. She had lovely auburn curly hair, and she's very fresh, clean, pretty. And she was like a mixture of a woman and child.
Tell me about that girlish innocence. That seemed to mean a lot to you, I guess, in the beginning.
Yeah, it did. It's just with Rebecca, I thought a sense of identifying with certain aspects in her life. She just had the look that just attracted me to her.
His memories of her are lucid. He recalls every detail about her. Even to this day, he still fantasizes about Schaeffer.
To answer this question, Dr. Stone digs into Chapman's past.
As I study Chapman's case, I discover a history plagued by internal conflict, obsessions, and addictions.
Since age 8, Chapman has worshipped the Beatles. He listens to their albums endlessly, even fantasizes about becoming a fifth band member. He loves the idea of fame. It is a way to escape troubles at home. His parents fight incessantly, violently. Chapman withdraws from them through music and an imaginary world. In it, he is the king of a village of little people. They speak to him.
The hallucinatory voices strongly suggest symptoms of schizophrenia. The voices confuse him, blur the line between reality and fantasy.
Chapman tries to quiet the voices. He immerses himself in religion. Still, the voices persist. He later turns to drugs and alcohol and withdraws further into the church.
Chapman shows signs of an addictive personality. Addicts are obsessive. They latch onto things that give them purpose and pleasure. For Chapman, religion and music became his fixations, and he would do anything to protect them both.
(1966). The Beatles are at the height of fame. But John Lennon angers some fans when he states the band is more popular than Jesus. One of those outraged is Chapman. He takes Lennon's words personally.
This was certainly a defining moment in Chapman's life. He was fanatical about the Beatles. He was fanatical about the church. Now, those two things were at odds, and the conflict ate him up inside. Unable to cope, his addictive ways turned to a new fixation: to destroy Lennon. Somehow, that would reconcile this internal conflict.
For 14 years, Chapman harbors resentment for Lennon. In 1980, he flies from his home in Honolulu to New York twice. On each visit, he haunts the singer's neighborhood. In the evening, he returns to his hotel and hatches a plan to murder John Lennon. He spends 3 months plotting. That December, Chapman makes his third and final trip to New York. He's determined to settle his score with Lennon.
Stalkers tend to be very narcissistic, egocentric. They're not only after their victims, they're also looking to redeem their sense of self. But there was something more wicked and conniving about Farley. He had a strong need for control and power. This is evident even in his childhood.
Farley grows up in a family of 6 children. As a boy, he is self-centered, a trait common in stalkers. He dominates his younger brothers, perhaps mimicking his abusive father. As an adult, he fuels his need to dominate by spying on people. He gathers intelligence for the Navy. Spying is part of the job, and a tactic he later uses on Black. The more she turns him away, the more invasive Farley becomes. He sneaks into her office, makes copies of her house keys, and leaves a spare set on her desk. His aggression escalates.
I have your parents' address, so if you run, I'm ready to follow you. If pushed enough, I'm capable of killing to protect myself, and the hell with the consequences.
Frightened, Black complains to her bosses, and Farley is fired. But he continues to trail her. She gets a restraining order against him. Unable to go near her, Farley snaps. February 16, 1988. Farley returns to the office with 7 guns and a rifle. He kills 7 and wounds 4, including Laura Black. She survives. Farley eventually surrenders.
There he is. They got him.
What makes him more vicious than most stalkers is he not only killed multiple people, but he purposefully killed innocent people in front of Laura Black. He knew this would inflict great pain and suffering upon her. Because of the severity of his crimes, I placed Richard Farley at level 14 on the scale. This place is reserved for egocentric schemers. A killer who interprets rejection as a major blow to his ego and then lashes out in an attempt to save face.
Richard Farley is now on death row in California.